Here's something interesting, Laura.
Fucking
Here's
weird.
something interesting I learned last night. They talk about the four brothers, right? That there was four brothers, DNA or something, right? Isn't that what I'm hearing?
Okay, I was going to
That's what
ask you
other
because
channels are reporting.
I've
Okay,
been a little bit
but
behind lately.
but
What for?
there's only one in this case. When you look, there's only one family with four brothers. Guess who that would be?
It's okay. I don't know. I'm not going to guess.
I'm just gonna say he's on TV a lot.
So it is Gonzalo. Okay, that's what.
Let's talk about that. Tommy Jude got that from a video Translucent put out. But if somebody tries to tell you that the four brothers being referenced are brothers of Kopaka, because yes, Brent had four brothers, but if they try to tell you that IGG information was talking about Kopaka, it wasn't. If they tried to say they were talking about the Gonzalveses, they weren't. If they try to tell you that this means Bryan Kohberger has four brothers, no, it doesn't mean that. So if you are not in the same room with them, please reach out and virtually slap them through your phone if somebody tries to tell you that these would be like direct brothers to these people. And let me show you the document. Okay, this was when they were talking to Leah Larkin during that closed IGG meeting where the transcript came out last week. And she was talking about how they, on the family tree, got onto profiles that were descended from the second great-grandparent of some matches. And there was a husband and wife. And it says the couple had doesn't tell you how many children, so it says there conceivably could have been hundreds of descendants of this couple. I haven't seen the full tree, but I've seen they had redacted children. Othram chose one of those children and tracked down grandchildren, and there were four brothers. Now, those four brothers were on the Kohberger family tree, because if you go back up, Ann Taylor asks her, when Othram quit work, were they following a family tree that could have led to Bryan Kohberger? And Leah Larkin said yes. So those brothers being talked about were not on the Kopaka family tree. They were not on the Gonsalves family tree. Okay? It was not Kopaka's DNA on that knife sheath snap. It was not Gonsalves' DNA on the knife sheath snap. It was Kohberger. Okay? And they were on to the family tree. So if you hear any of this four brothers nonsense, it was low matches on the Kohberger family tree, so that means it's cousins, likely distance cousins, because as they were talking about these descendants they found, there's several because of how far back they go when they do this IGG process. So let's move on to another misunderstanding in all of this.
And then so Ann Taylor asked, is it your understanding that the FBI's work said that it was Bryan Kohberger's DNA on the knife sheath? Answer, this is not my understanding. So Ann Taylor asks, what is your understanding? And Brett Payne says, my understanding is that the FBI concluded that Bryan Kohberger was a possible source of DNA we should look into. They did not, to my knowledge, at any point say Bryan Kohberger's DNA is on the knife sheath. That was never conveyed to me. You know why the FBI doesn't want anything to do with this case? Because they know exactly whose fucking blood that is. And it's not Bryan Kohberger's.
I have seen several people repeating that part from the hearing. And Rory's not the only content creator trying to claim that, well, it must not be Kohberger's blood on there because the FBI never said it was. And then I've seen other content creators saying, wait a minute, but I thought the FBI said it was Bryan Kohberger's, that it was a match. No. The FBI never said that. And Payne just confirmed that during that hearing. The IGG process is not about confirmation of whose DNA that is on the object or at the crime scene. It's about getting a lead. So much like when you put something into CODIS and you get a DNA match in CODIS because somebody's already been in there, and then you start looking further at that person and you start investigating them further. IgG is kind of similar, but in a roundabout way, and where you don't get that match right away. You get a lead that you then start investigating. So Othram received the DNA sample. They worked on a SNP profile. They started comparing that in genealogy databases. Now, the thing with Othram, they're a business. They want to have good relationships with other companies. So they don't want to burn bridges. So even though violating terms of service is not illegal, they don't want to violate other companies' terms of service, because then they're not going to have a good working relationship with these companies. Okay? So they were working on this profile. They found the Koberger family tree. Leah Larkins even confirmed that. I showed you just earlier in this video. They were on the Koberger family tree. They found these 4 brothers. One of the brothers was contacted asking if he would give further help and another DNA sample. He said no. But these brothers were low matches. So cousins, distant cousins, etc. of Koberger. It turns out they were on a different branch than like Brian Koberger is on. So all descended from the same couple, but they were on a different branch. And because Othram isn't going to go into these other websites and violate these other websites' terms of service, it slows them down. So it kind of put them at a stalling point. Would they have eventually gotten back over to the correct branch in the tree? I'm sure they would have, but they would have needed to do more searching in newspapers, like marriage announcements, death announcements, etc., building out that family tree. And then trying to get a hold of people to do samples, to give them DNA samples. And that's why you can see with the cold cases that this process can take 6 to 8 months. But with a cold case, time isn't of the essence. With a contemporary case, it is, because you're wanting to catch the person. So the FBI came in and they took that SNP from Othram and they loaded it in GED match like they were a layperson, not police, and some other sites, and voila, they had access to a whole bunch of other samples. Now, you can think whatever you want ethically about it, but it's not illegal. Violating terms of service of a website is not illegal. So law enforcement got quicker results because of that. And they found a higher match. So this was still with Leah Larkin, and this was when she was talking about how somebody with the initials of SC had loaded the profile onto the layperson account, layperson portal of GEDmatch. And it says there were a couple of other matches. One of them was actually 250 centimograms, which is something we get excited about in genealogy. One of them, I think, was closer to 70. So that 250 centimograms was likely the profile that put them onto Brian Koberger as a lead. Now, we don't know if that person was reached out to, if they had them do additional testing. Larkin sounds like she doesn't think they did because of how fast they did this all in 9 days. My guess is, though, that they probably did talk to whoever that person was with that profile, much like with the Golden State Killer, where they contacted one of the people in the family tree and they were like, oh, yeah, I have a cousin that lived up there at that time. It wouldn't have taken much once they got under the right branch of the Koberger family tree to determine that a family member was living in Pullman, Moscow. So then FBI gets onto that name, calls MPD, says, here's a lead. We think this might be the guy. Look into him. Investigate him. So they start their investigation. And lo and behold, drives the same type of car that was seen circling the house, has been to Moscow X amount of times, late at night. They pull phone records. Interesting that the phone went offline before the murders, comes back on after. You get that whole loop around after the murders. You have the phone pinging back near the house later in the morning. You have the trip down to Lewiston Clarkston later in that same day. Just pattern of behavior. Oh, by the way, he never pinged back in Moscow after the day of the murders, which is quite interesting as well. So you have all this stuff that's suspicious. So that just goes, well, we need to try to get an STR match now, because you cannot arrest just on IgG, because IgG, again, does not give you like a match. It's a lead. It's an investigative lead. So that's when they went and did the trash pull. Father's DNA, paternal match. They get the arrest warrant. Buccal swab on Brian, comes back, direct match. And this is all why you can see why Judge Hippler said, had they included the IgG, it would have just furthered probable cause instead of hindering probable cause. Because you had the family tree, Koberger family tree. Then you had paternal match with the father. Then you had the buccal swab with Brian. That was the STR match. 3 things that are going to be hard to get around, although they're not going to bring the IgG up in court. So that knocks out one of them. So 2 things. The trash pull with the dad's DNA, and then Brian's own DNA. And that's going to be hard to get around. And I know people keep saying, oh, it's touch DNA, it's on a movable object, but to a jury, the defense is going to have a damn good reason how his skin cells ended up underneath that snap, like on that ridge under the snap. That's, if I'm a juror, I'm going to be going, okay, explain how, when, who does he think that sheath belongs to then? How did his, now I know they added Bicca Barlow because I believe they feel that they're going to have an uphill battle arguing against the DNA, and I believe so. I think that's why they added Bicca, but we shall see. But Anne also wants to kind of like quibble over whether an investigation was done or not. It's the same type of investigation they would have done had Brian been in CODIS and they got a hit right away in CODIS. Like I said, it just takes a longer roundabout way with IgG. But you still have to start investigating when you get a name, when you get a lead, and that's what they did. So they did do an investigation. And the IgG was a lead, and it turned out that lead was pretty spot on. So, but leave all your comments. I'm sure some of you are going to come at me about this because you still think it was planted or that it couldn't be his DNA. And then let me know if there's anything else you'd like me to discuss.